Well, a gentleman's agreement that is not publicly declared, it's not publicly announced, is just binding between the two so-called gentlemen. And it will not bind the successor or the public because the public and the successor didn't know about it. Uh, it's unlike a unilateral declaration where uh, the the president, if he declares unilaterally that he's giving up the West Philippine Sea to China, that's binding on the state because that's considered a unilateral declaration that's announced publicly. But in this case, nobody knew about it, and so they could not react. Nobody could do anything about it. So it's only binding between the two of them. Spokesman, Attorney Salvador Panelo, denied that there was such an agreement, and Harry Roque seemed to have backed down from his claim. And he was saying that, yes, I agree to the statement of Panelo. So it looks like it's being denied by the Duterte camp, and even the person who first brought it up has backed down on his claim. And Panelo said Harry Roque was lying and was just looking for publicity when he said that. So the spokesperson who replaced Panelo was, of course, Harry Roque. And Panelo said that Harry Roque was just a publicity seeker and was lying. So we have to look at that entire the context of how this happened. And well, first of all, legally, it's not binding on the Philippines. It's not binding on the successor. And third, it's even being denied now. If you recall, it came out in the Manila Times newspaper that an unnamed embassy official of China told the reporter of Manila Times that there was a gentleman's agreement. And that's how Roque reacted. He confirmed that there was a gentleman's agreement, but Panelo, he said he checked with President Duterte, and the President Duterte said, no, there is no gentleman's agreement. So that's where we are now. Legally, it will not bind the successor because it was a secret agreement and not disclosed. Nobody could react to it. And it was binding as far as both of them would agree to follow it during their term. But Duterte now is out of office. And of course, Roque himself was saying that it was only binding between the two, between President Xi and Duterte, probably because Duterte said, I love President Xi. That's why he made that promise. That's the situation now. And the Chinese embassy cannot produce any document because there is no document. They said it was just verbal. If you recall, President Duterte also said that he has allowed China to fish, the Chinese fishermen to fish in the exclusive economic zone of the Philippines in the West Philippine Sea. That clearly violated the Constitution, which says the marine wealth in the exclusive economic zone of the Philippines is reserved exclusively for Filipinos. So he violated it, and I was waiting for Senate to investigate it because any executive agreement, if you call it, or any treaty must be taken up by the Senate. At least they must discuss it. If it constitutes a treaty, it constitutes a derogation of our sovereign rights. But nobody wanted to discuss it. They were all afraid of Duterte. And that's already the Senate. How much more for the House? So it was a very strange situation where Duterte kept on violating the Constitution when he said the Navy will patrol only the territorial sea. The Constitution says the state shall protect its marine wealth in its exclusive economic zone. So, we were the only ones who were calling Duterte to task. No? We were calling him out of bounds. But the rest of the Congress, they just refused to tackle it. And I don't know why. And this is the result. Duterte kept on making those statements. And I think we should be very strict when it comes to the Constitution. We should hold every public official accountable if they violate the Constitution openly. It was an open violation. We have been very cavalier. In fact, you remember President Duterte, he allowed Dito, which is practically financed by Chinatel, a Chinese state-owned company, to install their towers in all our military camps. Can you just imagine that? Chinese receivers, transceivers will be installed in our military camps, so they will all collect all the communications of our military. And to the credit of our military, they refused to implement it. They could not, of course, say no directly to the commander-in-chief, President Duterte, but they just delayed, and now they're not implementing it. But because they know. But of course, I wrote about it, and of course the like General Esperon, who was head of the NSA at the time, they all defended Duterte, but the people on the ground knew the injury that could be caused, so they just refused to implement it, while their superiors paid lip service to it, but they did not. They all of them really didn't want to implement it, and luckily, not a single tower was installed. But that's I think we need really a whole of nation approach on national security. That we should be conscious. Right now, we allowed in the draft of the amended Public Service Act that Duterte proposed to Congress, he wanted the telecom company can be 100% owned by China, by foreigners. And he said, I will give the third telco to China, Chinatel. Can you just imagine that? And so what happened here was we all worked to stop it, to create poison pills. What happened was the intelligence service of the armed forces proposed to Congress to put their subject to national security. The president can decide not to implement this law allowing foreigners to own 100% of our telecom if it infringes on our national security. So that's one layer. And the telcos, Globe and PLDT, suggested to Congress that yes, foreigners can own 100%, but not state-owned enterprises, because the Chinese telecom companies are state-owned. So they were able to insert that. And I myself, because I was worried, I suggested to some congressmen that to put their subject to reciprocity, because if we allow China to own 100% of our telecom company, China should also allow us. But in China, foreigners cannot own a majority of a telecom company because they know a telecom company is essential to national security. You cannot allow foreigners to own your telecom company, especially under Chinese law. All Chinese citizens and companies, wherever they are in the world, are obliged to turn over to China, to the Chinese security agencies, any data that is in their possession. So if they establish a telecom tower in Camp Aguinaldo, and they get all those communications of our general headquarters, the Chinese who operate the Dito will be forced to turn over the data to Chinese security agencies. So there are three layers now that prevent the Chinatel from gaining majority control of Dito. Because first, if you're a state-owned company, you cannot own majority of Philippine telecom companies. Second, the president, for reasons of national security, can prohibit. And third, it must be subject to reciprocity. And China will never open up their telecom industry to foreign ownership, foreign control, because for them, They cannot. The essence of the Communist Party, their total control is control of communications. They cannot allow people to talk freely. That's why they even have a firewall for the internet. They have complete surveillance, and they intrude into your privacy. That's the way to control society under a communist regime. So for them, the telecom companies are very important, critical for control, for controlling society, and they will never allow uh, foreigners to control or manage their telecom industries. So they cannot comply with that condition, subject to reciprocity. Well, on the national grid, I think we have to renationalize it. We cannot, the Chinese are the one running the grid. They're technicians. There was a time when they removed all the Filipino technicians, and the ISAP complained. The Intelligence Service of the Armed Forces of the Philippines complained. So I don't know if they were brought back, but control over the technical matters under the national grid is in the hands of the Chinese, and they deny that it can be shut down from China. But I believe it can be shut down by China because these are all done electronically and through the internet. We can open our, if you have a house abroad, you can open it from here through the internet. You can start your car in New York from here through the internet. So you can shut down the grid from Beijing. It's as simple as that now. So we have to be very careful about this because China wants to grab our maritime zones and island territories in the West Philippine Sea. And we have to be conscious of that how can we fight China if they can shut down our national grid? That's why the Americans in their EDCA sites, they put up their own generator. They will not rely on the national grid. That's how critical it is. Even all our camps should have their own generator because in case of a conflict in the West Philippine Sea, China will just switch off the national grid and all our camps will go dark. But national grid is like printing money because everybody has to pass through the national grid, all the power. If you put up a plant in Quezon, Pabilao, it has to pass through the national grid because the power is delivered in Metro Manila. So it's like a tollway. The transport will not move unless you pass through the tollway. And there will be no electricity in Manila without that national grid. So it's really, and it will always be profitable. There's no way a national grid can lose money because you just add on to you just charge, and everybody needs it.
Right.
I don't know why it was privatized when it's so critical for national security, and there's no way it was not losing money. It should not lose money by definition. If it was losing money, then there's a lot of corruption there. Yes, he knew what he was doing, but he did it. That means it was intentional. When he said, do not patrol the EEZ, just patrol up to our territorial sea, he knew the consequences. That means China will grab our EEZ. Nobody will oppose China, but he did it willingly because he wanted to do it as a favor for China. It was against their national interest. That's why I said in wartime that would be treason, but in peacetime, that's culpable violation of the Constitution. He's an impeachable officer, but you need Congress to impeach him, and everyone in Congress will not do it. Why? Because you know why all the congressmen are under the thumb of the president? Because of the pork barrel. The Supreme Court before Congress had when they passed the General Appropriations Act, there would be a line there that the congressman can recommend where the public works will be placed in their district. But the Supreme Court ruled that is unconstitutional because Congress can only legislate. It cannot implement. That is an executive function. So now, but the congressmen still want their pork barrel. So they put the entire amount of the pork barrel in the Department of Public Works, and it's given entirely up to the president to distribute it. So you have to now kowtow to the president to get uh, your pork barrel, because you cannot recommend anymore. And so the president Duterte said, "Okay, I will give you your pork barrel, but I'll put here for later release." Remember that, for later release. When will it be released? After you have passed the bill allowing foreigners to own telco, because I want the Chinatel to be the third telco. I will also release it if you cancel the ABS-CBN franchise. So it was used in the hands of a president with that mentality. You can see what will happen.
Nagustuhan niyo ba ang ganitong pagtalakay? Mag-follow sa Informador FB page at mag-subscribe sa Informador YouTube channel. Ang Informador ay nilikha ng mga staff ni Atty. Ricky Tumuturgo, aka Insurrecto, upang lalong lumawak ang inaabot ng pagpapalaganap ng katotohanan at labanan ang fake news.